Hello and welcome to tips and tricks on how to catch your first big red drum. So we went out to Cape Charles, Virginia to go out and catch big red drum in the flats. Well, what you need to start out with is a medium action or a medium heavy rod. It really doesn't matter what rod you pick. I mean, it's really just dependent on you and what you prefer. What you need to go with your rod. Well, one, you need jig heads. What jig heads to use? You can use a GI jig head. Mostly what we use on all of our rods, we use the 1.5 ounce GI jig, or we use the 1.5 ounce invincible jig. As you can see in this clip, what you're gonna need to go with your jig head. So what we were using 7-inch diesel minnows. You can get these at any tackle store or you can get them at Walmart. We like to use Z-Mans because they're very durable, and I mean, they can stretch and they can last forever. And the same thing with the invincible jigs. Again, the 7-inch, we go with the 7-inch just because, I mean, the size of the drum that we're heading after and the size of the drum that you're going to be targeting are going to be huge. And you can use smaller baits, but mostly they're looking after that bigger bait fish. What type of line to use? So what we use on the boat is your Zuri braid. It really depends on what size drum you're going after. So we were going after big 40-inch red drum, and they pile up in schools of thousands. They come into the bay, and they eventually will end up in our waters in about July to August to breed. What line you want to use is about, if you're targeting smaller red drum, you want to look to use about 15 to 20 pound braid. For the big red drum, like in this video, as you can see, we're using about 3,500 to 4,000 reels. What that means is it's just really the size. Like, say you have a 2,000 reel, which is a much smaller reel compared to the 4,000 reel, which is going to be for bigger fish, such as 40+ inch fish, and I mean just any big game fish that you're going after. For the big 40-inch drum, you want to use about 40-pound braid or 30-pound braid. And the mono that you want to use is, I would say, 50 and 40 pound mono is good, because as long as you don't get the mono tangled up in their gill plate, which it can, and what it will do is eventually it will cut your line. But if that doesn't happen, you'll always be good as long as you just let the fish run. As you can see in this clip, we ran into a school of about 100 to 1,000 red drum, and there was a bunch of boats, and they were coming in on the drum. As we're out on the water, we can see the drum on a fish scanner. This scanner we can use to see side scan, which shows us where the drum are on both sides of our boat. So you can see little lines on the fish scanner to detect where the fish are at. We're usually riding about 20 miles per hour to even catch up to the drum, which is pretty fast. But these drum, man, they can swim. Once you get up to a big school of drum, you really have to get on them, because eventually what they'll do is they'll scatter up, especially when there's a lot of boats, like in this clip here. We were having a great day, over 20 big fish, and this was towards the end of the day, and you can just see all these people, and they were pushing in on these red drum, and we just started hooking into multiple. And in this clip, you can see my brother and my buddy Jake and two other buddies. They're all hooked up, and you can just see all the boats around us. If they get anywhere close to us, I mean, our lines could get caught in their boat prop, and that could mess their boat, but that's going to be on them. And that's why you want to really try to go and find your own school. But when you have a lot of people out there and they see that you're finding a lot of fish, they'll eventually come up on you and they'll surround you. And what that does is that will push the fish up on the surface and then they'll scatter. And that really messes up the fishing. Even with that, you can still find your fish by looking around for birds. What you want to do is you want to look for birds diving. And that could indicate big redfish feeding. They're either feeding on the surface or feeding right below the surface, but those birds are diving on bait and picking them up. And that's what you really have to look for. And that's why your fish finder comes really in handy, because when you see birds, you can go over to them and you look at your fish finder and there will be possibly a few stragglers from fish previously feeding. And that's what gets those birds going. So just looking around and looking at your surroundings and looking at that fish finder will really help you get on your first big redfish. And those were all my tips and tricks to hopefully get y'all on your first ever redfish, no matter what the size is, whether it's a regular slot redfish or one of the big redfish that was seen in the video today. I hope that this video helped y'all and y'all can finally get the chance to catch your first big fish.